The Two Popes on Netflix tells of the transition from one pope to another. Now, confession time. I'm not Catholic, so my entire knowledge of conclave and how popes are chosen is based solely on Dan Brown novels. This Netflix film tells the unprecedented story of Pope Benedict retiring and then transferring his power to Francis. Anthony Hopkins stars as Benedict and Jonathan Pryce stars as Francis. Both are great in this, but Pryce gets way more of the spotlight in this movie. Me not being Catholic, I don't really know too much about the players in this, the real life versions, that is. But it did feel to me like the movie was swaying towards one side over another. Hopkins' Benedict is not portrayed in too good of a light. It felt in part that this was a criticism of him and his actions. At least that's how I perceived it, especially when you take into account again that I don't know really anything about the players in real life. While Francis didn't come across as the absolute good guy either, he definitely was favored in this over Benedict. I really enjoyed watching the conversations between the two. Sometimes they were swapping barbs, carefully hidden and virtuous sounding words. And you watch them go back and forth really convincingly to me watching that they are believing the words that they're saying. Each of them has a stance. Each of them has a set of values and what they hold dear within their religion. And to show them back and forth of like, well, no, I uphold this, or you don't uphold this, or, well, you don't uphold this, or I hold this more valuable, or this is the way we should be acting. And both of them bringing very valid points. One thing that distracted me was the ever-changing exposure in the scenes. Sometimes they would just be way overexposed, so all your whites are just blown out. So everything in the background is indecipherable, and even the characters themselves are almost harsh to look at. And it was like painful on my eyes a little bit. And I don't believe that that was being used as an effect to show like holiness or righteousness. Nothing like that. I just felt that it was how it came across in those scenes, like the exposure went all wonky. And then in other times, the exposure was great. So you could see all of the details and you could see everything about the person and the characters and the backgrounds. And so the inconsistency is what drew me out. Maybe that won't bother you. That's okay. It tweaks me out sometimes. Now, I can't speak to the historical accuracy of this entire movie, but I was somewhat entertained, especially when you take into account that they go flashback, and so that we get to see other parts of the story as we build up to the present day, or at least the present day of the film, and what leads up to this, and how the characters are shaped, and what led them on their journeys. And I thought that was really cool to see. Sometimes it was in black and white, and then it would transition to color, which I thought was a really great effect, and because it had this noir feel to it, and truly a retelling of, yes, I was living in darkness, or this is what I was, and then I heard God, and boom, my life changed and I knew my direction. And right in that moment, you see it go to color. I thought it was great. I thought it was brilliantly done, and I really, really enjoyed that part of it. The dialogue in this is fairly gripping, and the story is pretty interesting too. But I really believe that it would have been even more so if I were Catholic, because then I could probably have a vested interest, or at least an opinion or a leaning towards one of the two people. That emotional tie to one of the popes would have probably sucked me in even more and really made me just like utterly glued to what was going on. Regardless of which one I chose or which one I believed is the better one or the good one or who I support. I don't even know how to say that without offending anybody. I mean no offense by any of this. I just believe that had I had an affinity towards one or the other, then that would have drawn me in so much more. And I was drawn into it, as I said. I ended up really enjoying the character arcs in this. I liked the growth of the characters and their workings together. And I think that was the really big thing for me, that you get to see transition of the two and you see some, what I would call growth. I mean, they're both old, and so it's done in a short period of time. Not just you can't grow once you're old. That's stupid. But just the characters themselves had a growth period in a seemingly short amount of time where they go from pretty much rivals to somebody who can share a laugh with each other or share a slice of pizza. I do feel the time of this did drag a little bit. And again, that could just be because I wasn't totally vested in one or the other, that I was just along for the ride. And I'm trying to input the information and understand who these people are and get all of their background and even what makes them work. I like some of the nuances to the characters, that Benedict prefers Latin, especially when he has to deliver bad news. Why? Because only about 20% of the bishops or the attendees in his meetings speak Latin. And so most of them will just sit there and smile or kind of agree or whatever. And I thought that was funny, especially from a character standpoint. I don't know how accurate that is. That could have just been thrown in for a moment of, to maybe sway me against Benedict or to sway me towards Francis or whatever, however you want to put that. But for me, because I don't have the vested interest in it, I just thought it was a funny moment. Hopkins and Pryce, they are the standouts in this. They are really the reason that you should watch this if you're going to. There's no sex or nudity, but there is some profanity and surprisingly violence, especially in the flashback scenes of the history leading up to. Some of it is real news footage or footage made to look like real news footage, but it does depict violence, so you need to know that going in. I give The Two Popes on Netflix 3 out of 5 couches. So do you have a favorite pope? Is that even a right question to ask? I don't know. If you do, who is it? Why? What makes them your favorite? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for catching with me.